former XPW superstar, as well as he has been seen on Wrestling Society X and in TNA Wrestling. Without further ado, let's welcome to the line Ryan Katz. How are you doing?
Doing excellent. What's up, JT? What's up, Andrew? How are you guys doing today?
Doing wonderful, man. Looking forward to the interview. Now, you just got done doing your own podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I started doing this thing called the Off the Ropes Slamcast over at HollywoodOutlaws.com. We do this every Wednesday. It's a video podcast. Every week they seem to be changing the technology on us. So I'd say in the next few weeks it'll be what it's supposed to be, and it'll be a full-fledged, video, I guess you'd call it a recap show, talking about wrestling.
That's awesome. It seems like a lot more workers are starting to get involved in the podcasting these days.
I think the way that the world has worked and social networking has worked, you got to do what you can to get out there and get the exposure and get your, get your videos or your podcasts or whatever it is spreading out to the people. So everyone's trying to get in there just to give themselves a little bit more exposure, help them build a fan base so they can draw a little bit more money when they go wrestle on the scene.
Yeah. Now, I got to ask you, growing up, were you a wrestling fan, and was wrestling your first career choice? If not, what was?
Oh, yeah. Growing up, I was a huge wrestling fan. I got to say, since I was 2, 3 years old, I don't know exactly, when I got into it, but I, since being the littlest child I could remember, always remember waking up Saturday and Sunday mornings, running into my parents' bedroom, jumping into bed to go watch the either AWA or NWA and go watch the Road Warriors. That was the team. Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, Precious Paul Ellering. That was the team that I was all about as a little kid.
Nice. Now, was wrestling your first career choice?
Oh, I don't know if I'd say it was my first career choice because being a smaller guy, I wasn't actually exposed to indie wrestling until after college. So I always thought I was way too small to get involved in the biz. So my first career choice of what I really ever wanted to do was become a game show host. I went to college, studied broadcast journalism with the intent to become a game show host. And it was then that I started doing my own wrestling radio show, and that's where I figured, I may be too small to get in the ring, but I can, get involved in the broadcasting side of wrestling, and then it became what I'd say my second career choice. And then from there I started training, and I jumped in the ring and learned about indie wrestling and learned that little guys could have an impact and make an impact and live their dream too, and it just kind of took off. So I wouldn't say it was number one career choice, but it was number two, only prefaced with the asterisk that it wasn't number one just because I didn't think it was possible when I was younger.
Okay. Now, how did you come to work for XPW initially?
Back in 1999, I was hosting that radio show out in Colorado I was talking about, and I had some guests on my show, and these guys were sending people out to Steve Kern's school in Florida doing some tryouts. So I spoke to them, brought them in, and we decided that it would behoove all of us to create our own little fed in school. So I started something out in Colorado back in '99. We did that for about a year and a half, and it kind of got as big as it was going to go. Me and my partners had some conflicting points of view, and at that point I knew I had to go try to do something to make my career go to the next level. And XPW, which is one of those companies that had that exposure, and I really set my sights on pursuing them. Sending them promo packages, highlight reels, phone calls, follow-ups, and all of that. And I just kept bugging them until it was a possibility and an actuality, and until they said, "Let's do it. You can be a part of us."
Now, Ryan, the XPW locker room, it was known for quite a cast of characters. Can you talk a little bit about the atmosphere in the locker room there?
Man, the locker room at XPW was awesome, man. Just the overall experience and ambiance of every single show we did, there was just an electric feeling that was going on. We had our crew that came up from, that came down from the north, which consisted of Pogo the Clown and Vic Grimes and J.R. Benson and Ron Head and Steve Rosano. And these guys were just fun guys who liked to have a good time, liked to party, and they were they were nice, fun, crazy, wild guys. And then and then you had the Sabu's and the New Jacks and the Shane Douglases, who brought we brought the stories and telling us stories constantly. But it was always wild times at XPW. There was never a dull moment, except for a post show. There would be the few hours of dullness when people were waiting to get paid. But other than that, man, XPW experience, especially when we were on the road, was a big, giant party.
Do you have any stories from being on the road with XPW you'd want to share?
Yeah, my favorite story was one of the times when we were in Philadelphia and, at the arena, and we were staying at one of the hotels. I can't remember what hotel it was, but I don't know. We probably had 12 hotel rooms on the particular floor, and everyone was partying, and I'm sure there was a lot of smoke filling the hallways, a lot of loud music, a lot of drunk dudes going up and down the halls, and we got word that the cops got called. So myself, Rob Black, Vic Grimes, Pogo the Clown, Super Crazy, Juventud Guerrera, Psychosis, and Damien 666 and Halloween, we all had to jump into this van and get the heck out of Dodge. I mean, and it was hysterical because we were running down the hallways, grabbed our stuff, jumped in there. I mean, we got a bunch of big guys and a bunch of, a bunch of the Mexican dudes, and we just piled in like 12 people deep into this little minivan just to get the heck out of Dodge so the cops wouldn't go after us. Good times at XPW, but those are the old days, man.
Definitely. Now, where did the GQ Money persona come from, and were you in favor of it?
The truth is, I never actually was a big fan of the name. It wasn't something I was so into. I thought it was a little bit too cliche, and I wasn't excited about it. Essentially, after I had my initial talks with Kevin Kleinrock and Rob Black about me being brought in, I came out and visited for a show. I think it was the January show at Birmingham High School. I believe it was Payback is a Bitch. It's where Vic Grimes and New Jack kind of rekindled their feud. But anyways, I was sitting there in the crowd, like pre-show when I first got into town, and Lizzie Borden came up to me, and she just says to me as she comes up, and she's like, "Oh, you must be GQ Money." And at that point, I kind of gave a little smirk, a look of I have no idea what she's talking about. But it was there that I was given my name. I mean, it was an unofficial introduction to what my gimmick and persona was going to be. So I was like, all right, it makes sense. I get why they wanted to call me that because I was, they always saw me dressed in the suits or with the cups, with the cuff links and the, the white colored shirt with the white cup collar and cuffs. So that I had that GQ Money vibe, but at the same time, I always just thought the name was a little bit too cliche.
Yeah. Now, in the XPW, what were some of your favorite memories, and alternatively some of your least favorite things in the promotion?
My favorite memories are definitely the big matches I was involved in. Me and Angel had a feud that was just awesome. I mean, and as a guy who got into wrestling at 5'5" tall and never thought he'd be able to go do a profile match or be in a main event or semi-main event, mine and Angel's match, the Raw Sewage match at Liberty or Death, was one of my greatest memories of all time. I mean, when I climbed the 30-foot tower and Angel came up climbing after, and I tried to pick him up on my shoulders for like a DVD, and he countered it and put me in a sidewalk slam. Sidewalk slammed me 30 feet off the tower into the kiddie pool of raw sewage as I watched the stars get further and further away in the sky, and as we crashed through the tables in the kiddie pool of sewage, and it went up my nose, and as disgusting as it was, and as much as I was ready to puke and felt like I was going to pass out from the stench, just hearing the 1,500, 1,700 people or so chanting the holy S was just something that I will never forget and truthfully goes down as one of my favorite all-time memories in my entire, not just wrestling career, but my entire life.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, who's one person that you've really learned a lot from, like someone who was sort of a mentor to you in the wrestling business?
There's one person through my history in XPW who I seem to learn a lot from, and it's a name that I don't know if people would expect me to say, and it's actually the Sandman. I mean, spending some time with him backstage and listening to his stories, and I had a couple of times, I went on the road once where we were shooting some promos in Ohio with him and Supreme and spending the night with him at the hotel. And then just when we do set design and setting up for shows, and he would always contribute. And and even post-match, I remember post-match when Chaos wrestled Danny Doran, enduring. Sandman just always had a lot to say and always, spewed forth a lot of knowledge. And I got to learn a ton. And actually, it was like 3-4 years ago at Cold Day in Hell when XPW came back with their reunion that my wrestling, knowledge or education took a whole new jumping level. And that was when he came back through the curtain after his match. And Sandman walks through the curtain and he's like, "That's the way you do it. Dropped an elbow and stole the whole show." And, when you hear something like that, and it really started to make sense of going, you know what? You don't have to do the crazy stuff to get the crowd to respond, and it is the use of psychology. And being a new school guy who came in with like a little flash and pizzazz and through the XPW style with extreme bumps, I was one who definitely liked to shock and awe, so to speak. And then when I finally was able to get that realization that, simpler works a lot better, I believe it's the most important knowledge I received. I received it from Sandman, and it's actually the knowledge that allowed me to come forth with my wrestling school and really create something I'm proud of and teach a way that's a little bit different than I necessarily learned.
I've actually been on the road with Sandman numerous times, so I know what you mean. Actually, I was at that Cold Day in Hell event with him.
I mean, see, Sandman's a genius. That's the funny thing about it. You don't expect it out of this guy, but we can pull back some clip from the Big Vision footage when he did Ultimate Insiders, the last call at the bar, and he was talking about how this was years ago already, and this was before the big real estate market crash, and he's sitting there in a promo talking about how all the subprime mortgages are going to lead to a huge collapse in the system. This was about 1.5 years before it happened. Who knew that Sandman was the prophetic, profound master of knowledge in the wrestling biz?
Exactly. I know exactly what you mean. Now, I got to ask you, how did you get involved with Wrestling Society X initially, and whose idea was the Fabian Kaelin gimmick?
Wrestling Society X had that natural tie to XPW. With it being a Kevin Kleinrock product and Big Vision product, there was already, I've been such a part of the family for so long with those guys that it was just, it was naturally bound to happen that they'd come to me and ask me to be a part. As far as the character, Kevin Kleinrock knew I had written a script a long time ago for a drama show, and in it, I had a character named Fabian Kaelin, and he was supposed to be this mysterious character that would never be seen. But Kevin said to me, "Hey, man, I like the name, and we want to do something with the character with you where you're going to be this wild ring announcer, Circus Barker, Sideshow Barker kind of guy." And eventually, as it develops and evolves into future seasons, it was going to be revealed that I was kind of a higher power and manipulating and promoting what was going on at WSX. So they thought naturally that the Fabian Kaelin name, based off of obviously the KZ Feezy, or however you want to say it, any of those types of terms, that they thought it was a good fit. It's one of those interesting things because I like the name, but it's a tough character to be associated with, and a tough name because, I've had a different name and established a different name before, and then here I come popping in this name, and it just did what it did, and it became a phase in my life, so to speak, of doing something a little bit, I guess, interesting. I mean, so many people disliked it that it's hard to look back at the Fabian Kaelin era and the WSX times with like, I have mixed feelings about it because just the character itself, there was so many negative comments about what I did. And, I think they were unjust comments because I was just doing my job and what was asked of me.